Alden kept his hands folded behind his back, lips tight and gaze focused on the horizon, even if he didn't see anything. Anything else, Trar? He asked his general and friend. The brown-haired god stared at the old father, who kept his back to him before shaking his head slightly. No, your majesty. The one-eye didn't answer, his heart beating steadily, but his feeling heavy at the thought of his son lost in Jonanam and everything he had just heard about the Engineerjar's report. Allfather, if I may, Terry stated, hesitantly, stepping forward. The blue eye turned sharply towards him, but the general continued. Seeing the wish of hearing good news, he tried to hide in the Allfather's eye. Of course, the Prince Loki might not have shined in battle as much as Prince Thor, but still knows how to handle a fight. Actually, he is pretty good despite fighting his own way. Plus, he's got his tricks and magic, he explained reassuringly. The Allfather remained expressionless, and after the secret swallow, Terry spoke up once again. He survived a dragon, my Ligel. He will come back from his quest. I am sure of it, he added, his voice sounding slightly impressed before tightening his lips. Perhaps you should trust him more, he added hesitantly. Alden flinched before he could control himself, and his eye looked at the man. He hesitated at a moment before opening his lips. I know, I trust him, he said sharply, making Terry feel guilty. I know better than anyone that he'll come back. He turned back to his Terry once again, frowning at the landscape of Asgard under his eye, his body suddenly tense. I worry about how he will come back, he murmured to himself. Not sure he heard well. Terry hesitated, shifting uncomfortably from one foot to another. He'll call Hedmadel, he said with a little voice. Odin looked back at him. The two friends exchanged a gaze, understanding the silent words between them. Terry understood exactly what Odin meant by how Loki would come back. The Allfather knew it, but they both decided to ignore this worry, despite the fact that Terry had no idea of the reasons that kept the Allfather so tense and insecure about his son on a mission in Jonanam. Thank you for your report. You may go. He finally dismissed him with a nod. Terry answered with a respecting bow and returned on his heels and left the Allfather alone to his thoughts. As soon as the door closed, elegant steps resonated in the room. Alden didn't need to look to know who it was. I'm worried, Frigga said, her hands fidgeting anxiously. He turned to her and after a moment lowered his gaze. She had came to his side, sighing slightly to herself. I could see that you are worried too, but I guess not for the same reasons, she murmured, glancing sadly. He sighed and turned towards her, cupping her cheek gently, almost delicately, forcing her to look back at him. It is true that I'm worried about Loki finding out more than what his mission is destined for, but I am also worried for my son, he said, his voice low. Her blue eyes shone in worry and thankfulness before holding his reassuring hands, leading it towards it and closing her eyes. How is Thor? Odin asked, trying to hide his worry for his elder son. He is feeling better, but he is still feverish and unconscious most of the day, she answered before silence fell between them, and they remained in the comforting presence of one another, bathed in the final light of the setting sun. Wake up, Loki ordered, lightly pushing at Aza's shoulder. She blinked sleepily, glancing around, before he got up and threw some bread and dried fruits. She caught them before they could hit the dark gray ground of the crossway. Eat, then we'll start going, he said, keeping an eye on the surroundings. She stared at him before rubbing her eyes and yawning. Loki stared at her, smiling lightly to him at how cute she would be sometimes, but he would never admit his thought to himself. You didn't wake me up. We said we'd take turns in guarding, she said, frowning at him. You were more tired than me. You needed the rest. Plus, I have finally at peace without your incessant and blabbering, he mocked, chuckling at the stare she threw at him. She ate quickly before they got up, and ready to continue their journey in the dangerous crossway. She stared at him expectantly, her eyes shining in curiosity despite her fear. "So what is this magical item you spoke about?" she asked excitedly. He smirked, lips parting to talk. "Remember when I told you about the Midgardians' legends of having their crossway as a common point?" he asked, continuing her vivid nod. "Among those stories of crossways, underworlds, and labyrinths, one is particularly interesting." "What story?" she asked, leaning forward slightly. "Of a hero who went in a labyrinth to kill a monstrous beast, but not to be lost. He was saved by the wit of the woman he loved. She gave him a ball of thread." Isa frowned, obviously disappointed by the simplicity of the story. "Fred? Are you trying to play with your ball of thread, little kitten?" she asked teasingly. He snorted and glared at her before speaking up again. "That ball of thread managed to guide that hero through the labyrinth so he could get out. But we're not in a simple labyrinth," she replied. "Would you please let me finish this?" he asked, sounding exasperated. She rolled her eyes but remained silent. He decided to talk before she could speak up once again. "You were so more attractive asleep," he muttered. "Are you saying you find me attractive?" she asked with a huge smile. "Don't think so highly of yourself," he replied sternly. "You are not that bad either, Your Highness," she said, smirking proudly at knowing what he truly thought of her. "I am much more than that, if you knew," he said, his eyes gleaming happily and smirking despite the situation they were in. "Now, if you would be so kind, finish that story. What makes that Fred so unique? Except being the best for a kitty, of course," he said, mocking lightly. He sighed, still smiling, amused despite himself. "That Fred is magical," he said, finally getting reduced item out of his pockets. Slowly it grew back to its normal size, and Isa's eyes widened. Loki now held a golden spear with the intricate, delicate drawings, very similar to the runes and spells that they were using in Asgard. But in another language, the spear was luminous in the dark, and as if it were light and bright as the sun inside. Slowly, lines and rays of light started to escape, swirled delicately around the sphere. She lifted up a hand and approached with hesitant fingers to the metallic sphere. She didn't have to touch to feel the warmth of it, and the warmth of it magic in it. "It's amazing. It's so powerful," she murmured, leaning even closer. "It's an item found in a group of Asgardian searchers while they were looking for entrances of the crossway. It's Greek, and I believe it's the ball of thread of the story that talks about," Loki added when he first noticed how fascinating she was. But who couldn't be captivated by such magic? "It kinda reminds me of Mudbellam," she said, frowning lightly when she observed more closely at the golden wisps dancing around in the sphere. Loki smirked before nodding and continued his explanations. "A Mudbellam is mostly used to catch thieves or see stars during the daylight. I think it has some sort of function that could be similar to a mundlam, a veil of protection against the creatures of the crossway, like a net. As the spells of the magical net were used for the mundlanger guiding us through the crossway. It's just like the stars, sailors, and sea," he explained. She looked back up at him, lips parted in sight on before her expression fell and she frowned, tilted her head slightly to one side. "It's quite very interesting, but those sounded like furies," she murmured hesitantly. "Because they are," he answered with a smirk. "So our safety in the most dangerous part of the universe rests on your theories about a Greek ancient magical item?" she asked suspiciously. "My mother agrees with me," he added, as if it would change the weight of his theories. She stared at him sternly, and he puffed his cheeks childishly. "And Phrygia," he exclaimed, rolling his eyes. "But it was never tested, proved? Is there any way to know if it'll work except we'll be attacked by the Norns know-what in this pitch black of darkness?" she shrieked, throwing an arm in the direction they were taking. "My father thought it was too risky, but I'm going to prove to him and everyone else that I was right all along," he exclaimed, his eyes beaming in joy and pride. "Calm down, Stallion. It wasn't proven yet. We might have very much die in here if you were wrong." "Do you realize that?" she exclaimed, not believing that he could be so dense about the dangers that would come to them. He looked straight into her dark pine eyes with such a serious and powerful look that she stepped backwards, swallowing and suddenly nervous. His watery green eyes were shining up so much strength and confidence that it would have convinced the wildest of beasts to bow down to his orders. She felt her heartbeat increase almost violently, not knowing what to think that she was looking into those eyes of his. I know what's better than anyone. If I die, then I will leave my family behind. I know what death means, and I'm not foolish enough to go in there without a backup plan. If the Golden Sphere fails, then I will fight my way through the monsters and beasts. I won't die, and I won't let you die either, he said with a hard and confident voice. His gaze softened a little, and he took a step forward, their bodies so close they could feel the heat from each other. Isa blinked at the lack of warmth that she felt on him from his body, but didn't think about it anymore, mesmerized by his eyes. Isa, I can promise you, on my father's name, that I will bring you back to Asgard safe and sound, he said firmly. I swear on the Leptavir River, he promised. Maybe the roar to seal the most powerful and faithful oath one can give, but Isa couldn't hear anything but his breathing, so very close and fresh, tempting to get her just even closer and to have a taste. She couldn't see anything about the amazingly bright green eyes. Loki's eyes lowered for a moment her lips, and she opened them, wanting to say something, anything, but she couldn't find a single word. He opened his own, his breath sucked in his throat, his eyes still fixated on her inviting lips, but then he looked back up at her and was as serious once again, but didn't try to move away from her. I can't force you into anything, but do you want to come with me in the crossway to find out if this golden thread really is what I think it is? He asked, his voice low. She had to force herself to come back to her senses and took a deep breath before answering, her gaze as firm as his. How dare you ask? Adventure is calling. Hurry up, Loki, she exclaimed, taking the first step towards the darkness. He smirked, his eyes gleaming with mischief and the golden light from the sphere, a joy he couldn't understand, making his heart beat warmly. How does it work? She asked, as they started walking slowly on the path, lightened by the scattered, sad torches. Loki frowned at the torches, noticing that they never ran out and they weren't making a single sound, not even a sparkle. The only sound they could hear was their steps and their voices. Loki? He turned back to look at Isa, who was staring at him, brows furrowed lightly. The golden thread? How does it work? She repeated. He shrugged lightly, glancing away awkwardly when she froze in her steps and stared at him. Really? She asked in disbelief. I haven't figured it out yet, but it has more energy and brightness in the crossway than all the other times I've examined it before, he said, holding the orb firmly in his hand, electricity running from his fingers throughout his body. I'm pretty sure anything giving light would look brighter in the darkness than the daylight, she remarked, her tone mocking. Did you figure that out on your own, or were you taught so? He asked in the same teasing voice. I just had a moment of brightness. You might consider letting those moments happen to you. That might be helpful, she snorted, smirking at their exchange. It is working, he growled, frowning at her comments. What makes you think so? She asked, looking perplexed. The mischievous god kept on observing the fascinating ball he had in his palm. The wisps of pure gold cedar kept on getting out and back into the sphere, dancing and swirling around, sphere at his fingers. Those wisps are appearing and disappearing. Don't you think it just looks like a ball of thread? He suddenly said, blinking at the metallic but warm item he was holding. He just stared at it, and then her eyes widened, and then she noticed it did look like a ball of thread, with wisps swirling around and spinning around in a little haze. Just like the story, she whispered, her curiosity and foremost knowledge coming back and forth and gleaming her eyes as brightly as the sphere. He nodded, then continued. It's never had such bright and vivid reaction until now, and it never gave off much warmth, and it feels like... He frowned lightly, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing the patterns of the delicate lines of the sphere's surface. Like a heartbeat? Is it alive? She asked with big eyes. No more, like a machine working out in the right path, he explained. sensing the little waves of cinder and power blood pulsing from the sphere into his body. She stared at the golden thread, then back at Loki, his beautiful face lightened by the light of the sphere and a few torches around them, burning constantly in complete silence. His usually pale skin looked pale gold, but his raven black hair had fiery red effects, and his eyes were gold as bright as a sphere. "Did your father ever see you like that?" she suddenly asked, breaking the silence. Loki froze completely, his eyes widening and tearing away from the sphere to stare at her in shock and disbelief. His eyes were back to his usual color, but what shook her completely was the look of distraught dancing in them. "What?" he asked in disbelief, not expecting such a question. Did all father ever see you so bright?" she asked hesitantly, but the look of awe in her eyes was enough to be understood by the god. Loki's eyes widened once more, and his lips parted in shock. His heart missed a beat before hammering so strongly in his chest he almost fell over. He blinked and shook his head, swallowing and glancing away. He quickly put a hand through his hair, looking shaken. "It doesn't matter," he whispered, as if Allfather could hear him. He started walking once again, in almost panicked and hurried walk. For the first time since Isa met him, his voice had wavered, just like his heart did when he realized that it wasn't the first time his whole life that someone had told him that he was bright. Not his father, not his brother, but him. He was bright, even if only one person ever noticed. Even if it's just Isa. It was enough to make hope and happiness pulse through his veins. He would show everyone that he was the worthy son of Odin, and he was good and bright as his brother. He barely even glanced at the gate he walked under, made the rock itself. It was nothing like the straight golden and beautifully decorated gates that he saw every day in Asgard. It was grotesque, the shape representing tortured souls and monstrous beasts, but he was smirking confidently and brightly as he walked under, staring straight into the darkness, knowing that finally he had his chance to shine and he would take it. He was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't react. When he heard a shocked gasp from behind Isa, he kept on walking, even when he heard her hurrying behind him. "Loki!" she cried out, grabbing his arm. He finally turned around and frowned at her, not understanding what was happening. But his eyes widened at seeing her panicked expression. His gaze followed her and he shivered. In pure darkness, something with bright red eyes was staring at them. The creature seemed bigger than them in height, and with a deep growl resonated around them. Loki swallowed, unsure of what she should be doing, when he didn't even guess the features of the monsters, except that it was big, dangerous, and probably a predator that had decided they were very tastily looking prey. There was no way he could fight it, anything in such darkness, and they weren't at their advantage in such a dangerous territory. They could be at the edge of pitch of emptiness for all they knew, fighting an unknown, probably very dangerous beast in complete darkness wasn't going to end well for the both of them. If he was brave and foolish as Thor, he would have stayed there and fight, but he wasn't. Thor was on the level of so-called bravery that Loki just considered as the most symbolic decisions his brother ever took. "Run," he breathed suddenly, taking her hand and suddenly pulling her behind him to run as fast as they could.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please stay pretty.